6 of them have completely vanished from the face of the earth. Not damaged, not in ruins, gone. And yet, more than 2,000 years ago, people traveled across the ancient world just to stand in front of them. They were called the 7 wonders of the world, the greatest things human hands had ever built. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Out of all 7, only a single one is still standing today. So what were the other 6? How did something so enormous, so famous, so unbelievable simply disappear? And why did one of them survive when everything around it crumbled to dust? In the next few minutes, you'll see all 7 brought back to life. A statue as tall as a building, made of gold and ivory. A tower of fire that could be seen from miles out at sea. And a garden that may never have existed at all. But first, why 7? The ancient Greeks loved that number. To them, 7 felt complete, almost magical. So when they set out to name the greatest sights on Earth, they didn't stop at 5, and they didn't push it to 10. They chose exactly 7. And the list we still use today comes largely from one man, a Greek poet named Antipater, who wrote it down over 2,000 years ago. He'd seen these wonders with his own eyes, and he tried to capture that feeling in words. Now, one quick note before we begin. In 2007, the world held a giant public vote and picked a brand new list, the new 7 wonders. The Great Wall of China, the Colosseum, Machu Picchu, and others. Beautiful places, all of them. But those are not the ones we're talking about today. We're going all the way back to the original list. The classical 7 wonders of the ancient world. The ones the Greeks and Romans argued about more than 2,000 years ago. And that list came from travelers. Ancient tourists who journeyed around the Mediterranean and wrote down the sights you simply had to see before you died. In Greek, they call them theomata, things that must be seen. Later, the word grew stronger. Not just sights, but wonders. 7 made the final cut. 7 marvels so far beyond ordinary life that seeing them felt almost impossible. Let's begin with the only one you can still visit today. The Great Pyramid of Giza. And right away, it breaks the rules. Because while the other 6 wonders were still just ideas in someone's mind, the Great Pyramid was already ancient. Think about this. When the Greeks were writing their list of wonders, the pyramid was already over 2,000 years old. It is older to them than the fall of Rome is to us. It's the grandfather of the entire list. It was built around 2560 BC as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu. The Greeks called him Cheops. And for one single structure, the numbers are almost hard to believe. It stood about 146 meters tall, and it held that record, the tallest structure made by human hands anywhere on Earth, for nearly 4,000 years. Nothing we built came close for 4 millennia. It's made of roughly 2.3 million blocks of stone. The average block weighs about 2.5 tons, as much as a car. Some of the inner blocks weigh as much as 80 tons, and they were stacked with breathtaking precision. And here's what most people never picture. Today, the pyramid looks rough and bare. But originally, it was covered in smooth, polished white limestone. Under the desert sun, it would have blazed like a mountain of light, visible for miles. Now here's a detail that still unsettles engineers. The base of the pyramid is almost perfectly level, and its sides are aligned to true north with stunning accuracy. An error smaller than you'd think possible without a single modern instrument. How they did it, we still don't fully know. No crans, no engines, no iron tools, just ramps, ropes, copper, and tens of thousands of workers hauling stone across the sand under the Egyptian sun. It remains one of the greatest feats of engineering in human history. And deep inside, hidden passages climb through the stone to secret chambers, including the king's chamber, built from massive granite blocks. Yet when it was finally opened, there was no mummy, no treasure. Khufu, and whatever was buried with him, had vanished long ago. Every other wonder on this list would eventually fall to fire, war, or earthquakes. But the pyramid just stayed, silent, patient, watching empires rise and vanish around it for 45 centuries. So what happened to the other 6? Our next stop is a place we're not even sure was real. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Of all 7 wonders, this is the ghost. because to this day, no one has ever found a single stone of it. Some historians think it may never have existed at all. The story goes like this. Around 600 BC, the great king Nebuchadnezzar II ruled Babylon, in what is now Iraq, and he had married a queen from a distant land of green hills and forests. But Babylon sat on a flat, dry, dusty plain. His queen was homesick, aching for the mountains and gardens of her childhood. So, the legend says the king decided to build the mountains for her. And about that name, hanging, the gardens didn't dangle from anything. The word really means overhanging, like plants spilling out over the edge of a high terrace. In some old tales, they're even tied to a legendary queen named Semiramis. He raised a towering series of terraces, stacked one above the other like a green pyramid. Every level overflowing with trees, flowers, and vines cascading down over the edges, so it looked like a forest floating in the air. And in the middle of a desert, that's the real miracle, getting water to the top. Some kind of ingenious system had to lift water from the river far below all the way up to the highest terrace day after day without ever stopping. It would have looked like something out of a dream. A green mountain shimmering above a city of mud and brick, dripping with life where there should only be sand. But here's the mystery. The Babylonians wrote down almost everything. Trade, laws, taxes, even the weather. And in all those records, there is not one mention of these famous gardens. Nothing. So where did they go? Maybe an earthquake toppled them. Maybe they were somewhere else entirely. Some think they were really in the city of Nineveh. Or maybe they only ever grew in the imagination of storytellers. A wonder made of pure legend. From a wonder that may be a myth, we go to one built to hold God. Deep in Greece, in the sacred valley of Olympia, the birthplace of the Olympic Games, sat a statue that made grown men fall silent. The statue of Zeus at Olympia, built around 435 BC by the greatest sculptor of the ancient world, a man named Phidias. And this was no ordinary statue. Zeus sat on a magnificent throne, and even seated, he stood about 12 meters tall, as high as a 4-story building. If this god had ever stood up, ancient writers joked, he would have torn the roof clean off his own temple. And he wasn't carved from cold stone. His skin was polished ivory. His robe, his beard, his crown, all of it hammered from solid gold. In the dim temple light, lit by a shallow pool of oil below, he seemed to glow with a life of his own. People traveled for weeks just to stand before him. It was said that a man who died without seeing the Zeus of Olympia had lived an unlucky life. To see him was to feel, for a moment, that you were in the presence of a real god. And here's a haunting little detail. Centuries later, archaeologists dug at Olympia and found the actual workshop where the statue was built. Among the tools was a simple cup with words scratched into the bottom. I belong to Phidias, the sculptor's own signature, waiting all that time. But the statue itself had a darker fate. Greece fell under the rule of Rome, and the old gods began to fade. A new religion rose, and the great temples of Zeus were ordered shut. What happened next, no one fully agrees on. Some say the statue was carried off to the city of Constantinople, far to the east, where it burned in a great fire. Others say it burned right there in its own temple. Either way, the ending is the same. The most magnificent statue of the ancient world gone. Melted, burned, or lost. Not a single fragment of that gold and ivory giant survives. But the next wonder didn't just vanish. It was destroyed on purpose. On the coast of what is now Turkey stood the city of Ephesus. And in that city rose a temple so beautiful that it was often called the most breathtaking of them all. The Temple of Artemis. It was built to honor the goddess of the hunt and the moon, and it was gigantic, far bigger than most temples the Greeks had ever raised. A forest of marble. Picture more than 100 columns, each around 18 meters tall, holding up a roof over a vast marble hall. It shimmered white in the sun, decorated with sculptures and gold, drawing worshippers and merchants from across the ancient world. Remember the poet Antipater, who listed the wonders. When he saw this temple, he wrote that the pyramids, the Colossus, and all the rest were suddenly placed in the shade, for the sun itself had never looked on anything to equal it. It was, to him, the greatest wonder of all. It took over 120 years to complete. Generations were born, grew old, and died while this single temple slowly rose from the ground. And then, in one night, one man decided to erase it. In 356 BC, a man named Herostratus set the temple on fire. His reason is one of the most disturbing in all of history. He didn't do it for money, or revenge, or belief. He did it purely so that his name would be remembered forever. The people of Ephesus were so horrified that they made a law. No one was ever allowed to speak his name again, so he could not get the fame he killed for. And yet, here we are, still saying it. In a dark way, his plan worked. There's an eerie legend attached to that fire. It's said the temple burned on the very same night that Alexander the Great was born, as if the goddess had left her home unguarded because she was away, watching over the birth of a future king. The temple was later rebuilt, even grander than before. But time, invaders, and the centuries wore it down for good. Today, on that spot, a single lonely column stands in a marsh, pieced together from the rubble. All that's left of the wonder that once outshone them all. Our next wonder gave the world a word you still use today. In the same region of ancient Turkey, in a city called Halicarnassus, a ruler named Mausoleum governed his kingdom. He was a powerful, ambitious man, and he was married to his own sister, Artemisia, which was accepted among rulers back then. When Mausoleum died, Artemisia was struck by overwhelming grief. So she poured the wealth of an entire kingdom into building him a tomb unlike anything the world had ever seen. Not a grave, a monument, a palace for the dead. The Mausoleum of Halicarnassus rose about 45 meters into the sky. A tall rectangular base, crowned by a ring of elegant columns, topped with a stepped pyramid, and at the very peak, a giant marble chariot pulled by 4 horses. The greatest sculptors of the age were brought in to cover it in statues and carvings of battles, gods, and heroes. It was so perfect, so famous, that its name became the word for every grand tomb that came after it. We call them mausoleums, after Mausolus himself. For around 16 centuries, it survived. Empires came and went, and still the great tomb stood over the city, until the ground itself turned against it. A series of powerful earthquakes slowly shattered it, toppling the columns and cracking the marble. And then people finished the job. Knights arriving centuries later took the fallen stone to build a mighty castle by the sea. So if you visit today, you'll find the wonder hiding in plain sight, its polished stone built into the walls of Bodrum Castle. And some of its surviving statues, including figures thought to be Mausolus and Artemisia themselves, now stand in the British Museum. The tomb of Mausolus never fully disappeared. It was broken, scattered, and recycled. Our next wonder, though, fell in a single violent moment. Off the coast of Greece lies the island of Rhodes. And around 2,300 years ago, its people had just survived a brutal, year-long siege by a massive invading army. And against all odds, they won. To celebrate and to thank their patron god, they decided to build a statue. Not just any statue, a giant, a colossus, a towering bronze figure of Helios, the god of the sun. The Colossus of Rhodes stood about 33 meters tall, roughly the height of the Statue of Liberty from feet to crown. In fact, Lady Liberty was directly inspired by it, more than 2,000 years later. So how do you even build something that big out of bronze? The Rhodians raised it around an inner skeleton of iron and stone, then covered it, plate by plate, in gleaming bronze. It was hollow inside, a mountain of metal wrapped around a frame. And now, let's kill the most famous myth about it. You've probably seen pictures of a giant standing with one leg on each side of the harbor, ships sailing beneath him. It's a stunning image. It's also almost certainly false. No statue of bronze could have stood spread like that without snapping under its own weight. The real Colossus most likely stood upright, in one piece, on a platform near the harbor. One hand perhaps raised to shield its eyes, or holding a torch. It took 12 years to build. And then, after standing proud for only about 54 years, a massive earthquake struck the island. The Colossus snapped at the knees and came crashing down. But here's the strange part. Even lying broken on the ground, it was so gigantic that it stayed a tourist attraction for centuries. People traveled just to see the ruins. It was said that few people could even wrap their arms around one of its fallen fingers. The bronze lay there for nearly 900 years. Then it was finally sold off and carried away, piece by piece, until nothing was left. A sun god, brought down by the earth and scattered to the wind. One wonder left, and it was a machine. Our final wonder is different from all the others. It wasn't a tomb, a temple, or a statue. It had a job to do, and it did that job better than anyone thought possible. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, often called the Pharos. It stood on a small island guarding the harbor of Alexandria, the dazzling city founded by Alexander the Great on the coast of Egypt. And it was enormous. Estimates put it at around 100 meters tall or more, as high as a 30-story building. For centuries, it was one of the tallest structures anywhere on the planet, second only to the pyramids. It was built in 3 shrinking sections, a wide square base, an 8-sided middle, and a round top. And at the very summit burned a great fire, kept alight day and night. By day, sailors could see its smoke. By night, they steered toward its flame. It said a huge polished mirror reflected the firelight far out to sea. Some claimed the beam could be seen from over 50 kilometers away, guiding ships safely into port. And that mirror sparked wild legends. Some ancient writers swore it could be used like a weapon, focusing the sun's rays to set enemy ships on fire before they ever reached the harbor. Almost certainly a tall tale, but it tells you just how magical this tower seemed. There's also a story about the man who designed it, an architect named Sostratus. The king wanted only his own name carved on a lighthouse. So Sostratus supposedly carved his own name into the stone first, then hid it under a layer of plaster bearing the king's name, knowing the plaster would one day crumble away. Think about how modern all of this is. Long before electricity, before engines, the ancient world built a machine of stone and fire whose only purpose was to save lives at sea. It gave its very name to lighthouses in many languages, even now. The Pharos stood strong for well over 1,000 years, the longest surviving wonder besides the pyramid. But it stood on shaking ground. A string of powerful earthquakes over several centuries slowly brought the great tower down. Its ruins sank into the harbor and were largely forgotten. Then, centuries later, a ruler used the last of its fallen stone to build a fort on the very same spot where the lighthouse once blazed. And in recent decades, divers exploring the seabed off Alexandria found them. Huge blocks and giant statues resting under the waves. The lighthouse is still down there, in pieces on the floor of the sea it once protected. So let's count what time left us. Of the 7 greatest wonders the ancient world ever built, the gardens, the statue of Zeus, the temple, the tomb, the Colossus, the lighthouse, 6 are gone. Fire took the temple. War and time took the statue and the gardens. Earthquakes brought down the tomb, the Colossus, and the lighthouse. 6 wonders, undone by flame, by force, and by the shaking of the earth itself. And standing alone, exactly where it has stood for 4,500 years, is the Great Pyramid, the oldest wonder of them all, and the last one left. The single survivor of humanity's very first bucket list. It's strange, isn't it? The wonders people expected to last forever, the gold, the bronze, the marble temples, are the ones that disappeared. And the simplest one, a mountain of plain stone, outlived them all. But maybe that's the real lesson hiding in this story. These wonders weren't built by gods. They were dreamed up and raised by people, with rope and stone and stubborn imagination. Every single one began as a thought inside a human head. So if you want to see the 8th wonder of the world, you don't need to travel to Egypt or Greece or the bottom of the sea. Just look in the mirror. Because the same species that raised these impossible things is still here, still building, still dreaming, still refusing to accept the word impossible. If you enjoyed this journey through the ancient world, don't forget to subscribe. A brand new wonder is waiting for you next time. See you then.